irresponsible, should I kick them out? And the whole premise of the article was basically digging deeper into, when should we kick our children out? When should your child leave the home? Like, how do we formulate that type of structure? Like, do you kick them out at 18? Do you, make them go to college? Do you make them work? Like, what's your process when it comes to, releasing your child from the nest, basically? Because that's pretty much what it is. I think for most of us, we would prefer if our child just at around that age on their own, they took the initiative to want to go to college outside of the state, maybe, or go to college and live in a dorm, or move out on their own, whatever that may be, right? You as parents, you want to see your kids take the initiative and be responsible and become adults, right? But I think, and what I was touching on in the article, I think this has to be handled on a case-by-case basis. And also, as black folks, like speaking directly to my people, we have to look at under what conditions did we raise our children under. I think sometimes we get like selective amnesia when we can have, as a kid, when our children were kids, we could have fucked their life up. We could have put them through trauma. We could have been on drugs. We could have been house to house. We could have been extremely unstable. And then once we come out of that, we want to act like that never happened and demand all these things from our children, when I think we need to be realistic about, first, how did we raise our children? Like, what type of responsibility did we bestow upon them as a adolescent, when they're 9, 10, 11 years old, when they're around the house with us? How responsible did we require them to be? You feel me? How affected were we by the racist system that we live in? How affected were we by the crack epidemic? How affected were we by poverty? You see what I'm saying? Like, all this shit we had to take all this shit into consideration, because I think sometime in our community, we normalize shit that's just not normal. Being in a impoverished environment, living without certain things, that shit ain't normal. You feel what I'm saying? But we normalize it based on the mental fuckery that we've been kind of put under being in this system, and how we look at each other, and how we, may see what I'm saying? So as parents, we have to be real with ourselves and be reflective and accountable for how we used to live, how accountable we would make our children. All these things are necessary to look at. And again, it's on a case-by-case basis. Now, also, what I was saying in the article is, you have to look at if you have multiple kids, right, looking at each individual child and how responsible they are, actually. Even if let's say you provided them with the right upbringing, you provided them with the resources they need to be effective in school, to be effective in society, and you see this kid just isn't responsible. This kid is continually going the wrong way. This kid is continually defying me to a degree. You see what I'm saying? So if you have a child that is coming of age, they're 17, 18, they're getting around that age, and they don't listen, or they're having sex irresponsibly. Let's say they fucking with drugs a little bit irresponsibly, but you can see when it comes to their lives, just as far as how they take school, how serious do they manage schoolwork? How serious do they manage any activities outside of school, right? You got to take a look at that shit. But if you have a child and this is my opinion, if you have a child that's around that age that's being extremely irresponsible, and you've given them everything you could, you've put your best foot forward to provide the resources and the structure necessary to make them well-rounded adults, and let's say they still choose to go the other way, tough love really needs to be instituted. I think when we look at black families and when we look at single moms, sometimes, for whatever reason, sometimes women find themselves in situations where it's just them raising their kid. Tough love has to be instituted, man. So in my opinion, sometimes all that a young person needs is that shock of reality. So sometimes we should put their ass out. And mentally, the way you should frame it, in my opinion, is this isn't permanent. You ain't got to tell your kid that, but this isn't a permanent thing. It's not like get the fuck out, stay out. But no, you in my house. Excuse me. You in my house. You don't want to live by my rules. You don't want to listen to what I have to say. Excuse me. Your ass need to get out. Pack up all they shit, put their shit outside. And then most kids, I think, will mature from a situation like that. They'll see, okay, it's difficult out here. Like my mom used to always tell me, nobody outside of this house love you. And I never, or nobody outside of this house gonna love you like I do. And basically all she meant by that is we conduct the relationship with our kids with a lot of empathy, with a lot of love, you feel me, with a lot of passion. People outside of your house just don't give a fuck like that. So they're not going to treat you with the same amount of empathy, with the same amount of care that you're handled with when it comes to one of your parents. So sometimes a kid or a young adult needs to go out of the house just to see how tough it is. They need to go out of the house to see how it feels to pay bills, how it feels to be responsible.